Oh, absolutely. And unfortunately, I blame the United States uh, government and leadership and political system for a lot of that. A lot of Americans don't like me saying that, but that has been my biggest disappointment over 30 years, which is a wealthy, powerful, capable country uh, just did not rise to the occasion. And I saw it then. And for me, the disappointments mounted from then. Uh, and I'm really unhappy about U.S. foreign policy now. But that has been a growing feeling over more than 30 years. It's strange. Of course, the U.S. is just one of 193 countries, and we're just 4.1% of the world's population. So people may say, well, isn't it really a little ridiculous to put so much weight on the U.S.? And I think there are two answers to that. One is, well, I'm an American, so I judge our own situation first, no doubt. But second, the U.S. believes itself to be, describes itself to be, and in some ways is a special country in the mix, in that it's very powerful, very rich, very influential. And it's in that particular sense that I think we should have just done a lot better than we've done. And why I feel down on the U.S. approach to the world and even regarded as very dangerous.
Um, yeah, I think for people who weren't around then, it may be hard to imagine how much influence and power the U.S. had. And I've always thought that at that point we had great norm shaping power. I've made the case to people, and they're almost always skeptical, that if we had really made it our mission to establish the norm of complying with international law by like talking about it and complying with it ourselves, I think that could have been had a real influence on the direction of events. Of course, it would have meant that we did a whole lot of things differently than we've done. Does that seem crazy to you?
Well, I've always thought that there were two essential parts to a decent world. One is that the rich countries would be generous and help the poor countries to get out of their poverty, and in no small part because in some broad sense, the rich countries had imperialized or colonized much of the low-income world, and so there was not just a sense of responsibility of the rich to the poor, but a sense of historical accountability as well. The second thing that I thought was, and I believe to be crucial, is that we get along with each other through dialogue and diplomacy rather than war. So those are the two dimensions that I think are needed to shape a decent world. The world's divided between the rich and the poor, and the world is just armed to the teeth in each other's face, and with a hot war now raging in Ukraine. So my experience is the United States was anything but generous with the rest of the world. It was so stingy in my experience. It has shocked me and dismayed me for more than 30 years, and it's gotten worse over time. And the United States is really militaristic in its foreign policy approach. We talk about all those terrible things other countries do. Of course, Russia's top of list right now, but we seem not to be able to grapple with our own relentless militarism. I'm now 68. The U.S. has been at war virtually every year of my life, and most of it in wasteful wars of choice that were incredibly destructive and incredibly misguided. So, yes, I'm not only frustrated, I'm rather alarmed right now because we speak casually about this terrible set of events in Ukraine without appreciating how close we are to the nuclear threshold. And that's no panic or no craziness. That's actually reality that you learn in being involved in international diplomacy over decades. There just are a lot of reckless, stupid people around that could do profound damage to the world. And so anytime there's a hot war raging and this kind of venomous talk vis-a-vis Russia without any dialogue going on, it's very frightening.
What would you say was the first kind of big mistake? I mean, if you just had to, when did you first think things were going awry in a fundamental way in terms of U.S. foreign policy?
Oh, I know it. It was November 1991, and I remember the moment also, but because I was in a very unusual circumstance. I was the leading external advisor to the Solidarity Movement and to Poland's first post-communist government. I had more of a front row seat than you can even imagine because I was involved in the core issues of democratization, of the end of the Cold War, and of economic strategy. And I had an incredible experience. We don't have time to go into it at length, but for some time, I'd make a recommendation about what to do, and within hours, the U.S. government adopted it. I thought, gee, that's pretty cool. I created a stabilization fund for Poland in September 1989, typed out the proposal in the morning, and by the evening, the White House confirmed $1 billion to help stabilize the Polish currency. So I thought, gee, this is a roll. The U.S. is being constructive. It's being forthcoming. The program that I recommended for Poland stabilized the country. It restored economic growth to a collapsed economy within 18 months, enabled Poland to have its best 30 years of growth in its history, and to join the European Union, and so on. Okay, that was good. Then in 1990 and 91, the Soviet Union, President Gorbachev's economic team asked me for some advice based on what was happening in Poland. And I gave it, and I worked on a project to help provide financial backing to Gorbachev's reforms in the spring of 1991. And they were flatly rejected by the White House. And I thought, my God, this is stupid. Here you have the it's not even once in a generation, once in a century opportunity for peaceful transformation. And you tell Gorbachev, sorry, not a dime. Okay. Then when Gorbachev went home empty-handed from a G7 summit, he faced a putsch. He was kidnapped, in effect, and he spiraled down in power, and it was the end of the Soviet Union, in effect. Then came Yeltsin as president of Russia and what would soon be an independent Russia. And his economic team called me and said, please hurry to Moscow to the dacha to discuss economic strategy. And I did. And I saw that Russia was without foreign exchange reserves. It was facing a fulminant economic crisis. It was like having, a heart attack on the table, or you needed defibrillator or some absolutely urgent response. And the G7 countries, led by the United States, the most powerful 7 countries of the world, which at that time controlled about 50% of world output, sent the finance deputies, so-called, basically the number twos of the treasuries and finance ministries, to Moscow in November 1991. And I said to the acting prime minister, you need a debt standstill. That means you need to tell them, look, don't make me pay debt right now. I have no reserves. I can't go broke. I can't afford a hyperinflation. And I thought, this is just about the most transformative moment in modern history. Of course they're going to accept this. They're going to say, what can we do for you? This is so crucial. And I remember Yegor Gaidar walking out,
And who was that?
ashen-faced
Who
from
was
Yegor Gaidar was the acting deputy premier and the chief economic
okay?
advisor of Yeltsin. And after the briefing, he went into the room with the G7 deputies, and the meeting ended, and he walked out ashen-faced. I said, what happened? He said, they rejected every proposal flat out. They said, you continue to pay every penny due, or we turn the food aid on the high seas around, and so forth. Okay, that's the moment, Bob.
Was it now?
For
What
me,
was? Yeah.
now, I could not believe what I heard, because I know a lot of history. I knew a lot of U.S. stupidity. I had lived through it. But I thought, this can't be right. So I spent basically the next 18 months doing anything I could try to do to mobilize some kind of positive response and support for a democratic, peaceful market reform in Russia. And Washington was absolutely without a response. And I had just gone through this with Poland with completely the opposite results. And I did not understand truly the geopolitics. They were going to
Do you understand them now? Now, first of all, this was the first Bush administration. Still,
This was the end of the Bush administration, and then the same thing happened in the first year of the Clinton administration.
What was the source of resistance ideological? I mean, you wouldn't expect a ton of ideological continuity between the two. I mean, although, of course, the U.S. foreign policy establishment tends to be a more or less constant thing. But
it is a deep thing. This is a truth. It's a deep thing. It's not dependent so much on who's president. In fact, you sometimes wonder if the presidents really have much role in it at all.
But is this fiscal conservatism?
No.
What is going on?
No, what's going on is that the United States already decided now we're going to be the sole superpower of the world, and Russia is going to basically just have to be cut down to size. But we're certainly not going to take any heroic measures to sustain Russia as a viable potential threat to us. And so Russia's an enemy still, or a threat. It's a competitor.
Don't you think if you had asked the first George Bush, if you had asked Bill Clinton, they would have said, and I think meant it, we want to integrate Russia into the West. I mean, it was still the Soviet Union for a while.
Correct.
Then it became
we want to integrate them into a U.S.-led system.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.